It's January 30th, 2023. This is Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 234 of Roqe. Can a free Iran set a new standard for unity? I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Salam dostan aziz. Durud bar shoma. Imagine a free Iran setting a new international standard for unity. Do we dare to dream? Look, it's no secret that Iranians can suffer from a bad case of internal discord. We often lament that we are chronically disjoined. We seem to build up new potential stars and then come up with all the reasons they're wrong. We are the people that are desperate to ask, can't we all just get along? And it's been our frustration that we cannot defeat the Islamic Republic regime because the opposition is forever divided. And yet now we also can't let anyone have a pass in social media without being cancelled or derided. But guess what? This is actually not a unique phenomenon that is somehow only about Iranians today. It turns out bickering and partisanship is not only in our DNA. That's right, we're not alone in arguably the defining feature of 21st century civilization, and that is that all around the world, there is an epidemic of political polarization. You think Iranians are rife with dissension? Try looking to America and the cleavage along party lines that is shaking that country to its roots. The UK split itself on Brexit, and Brazil is divided to the extremes. Add India or Poland or Turkey to the list. Polarization is not just an Iranian illness, it's a global one. But what if we were to recast the possibilities of a future democratic Iran? What if we were to allow ourselves to strive for a society where disunity and sectarianism were largely gone? Is it possible? Can a free Iran set a new standard for unity? It might sound laughably naive, but it's worth an effort, is it not? If you're going to have a revolution, you might as well aim with everything you've got. And this wouldn't be about killing dissent or disagreement, quite the opposite. A variety of opinions is entirely worthy of preservation. It should be our mission to allow an exchange of opposing ideas and a robust, challenging societal conversation. But the part where nations and democracies are being divided to the core, at best we suffer with enmities, and at worst we end up in a civil war. Maybe the bright side of the devastating experience of the last 44 years with this barbaric regime in Iran is that we are all too aware of the folly of our own divisions. As disheartening as it's been to see potential new leader types get attacked and opposition factions end up in shouting matches, it's been just as energizing to see the global Iranian community want to keep that disunity in check and to remind everyone that we have a common goal, and that is a rehabilitated great country. And it is not for those of us on the outside to speak for those inside the nation, but we can definitely opine on the diaspora and the present-day situation. Admit it, when different prominent Iranians from different sides of ideological, political, or even cultural parts of our community come together, it can feel really empowering. Think of the strength of the young women who came together to start this uprising. Think of the power of united Iranian youth who refused to see the revolution die. Think of the artists and scientists and thought leaders who are just waiting to fly. There is so much wisdom and talent and compassion inside Iranians that a united nation would be a powerhouse no matter what flag was unfurled. Can a free Iran set a new standard for unity? If it does, it can change the world. Coming up, a new edition of Roqe featuring the very talented singer and performer Saba Zameni, live in the Roqe Studio for an interview and performance, plus journalist and cartoonist Nikahang Kowsar returns to Roqe, and the Roundtable is set to go. This is Roqe, episode 234. Can a free Iran set a new standard for unity? Here we are in the Roqe Studio. You know what I'm excited about with this show? Saba Zameni is coming in, as you know. She's just outside. She's going to be here in the Roqe Studio for an interview. But she's also going to perform.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Perform live here. And I think we completely haven't practiced it, but I think Shaya and I are going to actually back her up.
Awesome.
Jam,
yeah.
Jam session.
Jam on the show. I guess Shaya will be on the piano and I'll be on the drums.
yes.
But Saba Zameni. So
Is it going to be first time that I'm playing with you? I think so. Huh?
no, well,
No, I mean as a record
on the show.
to some.
No, maybe we've not done this before.
No.
Jeez. Poor Saba. She was like, "Yeah, you guys should play with me." I was like, "Oh boy," she has no idea what she's getting into. But Saba Zameni. This song. How do you say it? Bizaram az din shoma.
Yes.
It is one of the anthems of the. It's become one of the anthems of this revolution now, and Saba. She was known, but this has really carried her into a new stratosphere because she recorded this song, just her and a drum, reciting this kind of revolutionary anthem that I think it's 2 or 3 decades old. It comes from Yazd, but she's casting it in a way of basically speaking of the regime. I hate your version of religion and all of this, and Iranians. This is an interesting one. I'm going to tell her this, but this is one of those where if you grew up in Iran, or if you're steeped inside Iranian culture, all of that, this piece. If you're a diaspora kid entirely like me, didn't know it.
Yeah,
didn't know it
either.
until the revolution, until now, And then I see everybody singing along to it, and I go, "Oh, how come everybody knows the lyrics?
What am I missing?"
Yeah. So Saba Zameni, we've had her on the show before. She's only been in Canada for about a year or something, and up until a couple of years ago, she was arrested and in jail. I think more than once for just wanting to sing as a woman in Iran and record, etc. So very happy to have her on the show, and we'll have a talk about how the last few months have been for her, especially now that she's got these millions of people, viewing her work, and she's having the impact she's having, but also to perform here. And then after that, we're going to go to Washington, D.C. and Nikahang Kowsar, who's becoming something of a regular, the journalist and blogger and cartoonist, Nikahang. And I love having him on the show because he's kind of like, I was going to say like Leonard Cohen. I mean, he's not, I'm not going to say he's like Leonard Cohen, but in the sense that Leonard Cohen, I always felt like you could ask him anything. And he's going to have a sage answer for you. When Nikahang comes on, I just want to ask him about anything, anything at least Iranian related, Iranian diaspora related. A lot of his focus has been on water and the environmental situation in Iran, which continues to be a situation. Yeah. Even though the headlines have been overtaken by executions and horrific things happening at the hands of this regime, there also happens to be a dire environmental crisis that continues in Iran. He's going to speak to that. And there was this earthquake that happened on the weekend. There was some report that he was sharing that said that actually the water supply crisis in Iran, the water bankruptcy, is not unrelated to the impact of earthquakes.
Wow.
Iran's an earthquake zone, and without where this earthquake happened in Azerbaijan, in the Azeri region, is related to Lake Urmia having not being full. So I don't know the science of this or the geology of it, but one thing compounding another in crisis-ridden Iran. So anyway, Nikahang will be here. I'm also curious to ask him about his take on the leadership endorsements and race and all of that stuff. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was, relaxing a little bit.
Oh.
After a long week, so it was nice.
Okay. All right.
How was your weekend?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not used to Shai asking how I am. I was good. Yeah. Got a bunch of stuff done. It was all right. I actually thought a lot about the essay I just did. I was thinking about about how polarization is a phenomenon, and I read a bunch about it this weekend, and I know it seems like a pipe dream to think that we can forge a new society, that is unprecedented to a certain extent, because there's very few countries that are united that way. Sometimes a country can unite when there is a common enemy. I'm thinking about Ukraine right now. I mean, I'm sure there's some outliers, but it seems like that country is really united.
Yes.
They may have some political arguments or conversations or differences, but they are the Ukrainian people are so united, and Iranians feel like I feel like there's a common enemy, and in this case it's more internal than in the case of Ukraine, but the case for unity should be so strong, in the face of that common enemy.
Yeah, one of the actually, I mean, because you mentioned Ukraine war, one of the ugly way that Islamic Republic, especially at the beginning with the Iran-Iraq war, tried to unify people was with continuing war, because
of course.
So I mean, and
we did a contemporary history of Iran episode about how the Iran-Iraq war, intentional continuation of it benefited Khomeini.
And so I mean, nowadays also there is a fear that Islamic Republic starts a war, and force people to be united, and I hope
that's kind of a segue into a bit of a roundtable here before we get to Saba coming into the studio, because there was what some people were calling the precursor to a war, these drone strikes that happened over the week. It was all very confusing when it happened. There was some explosions. We don't know where it's from. We don't know what's going on. But for me, the telltale sign was 7 different places or whatever it was, and munitions factories, and it seemed so sophisticated that this wasn't some kids I mean, it takes I kind of assumed that it was Israel or something. So, it's a very sophisticated attack on Iran. So what have we learned about this?
Well, no one's really taken responsibility yet, so we still don't know, and I almost feel like it's still just as confusing. But just to kind of recap, like you said, there was a collection of events that took place, and it all involved multiple explosions at various factories, various, I guess, prominent locations in varying cities in Iran, and at least in regards to one of the events, or one of the explosions rather, the Defense Ministry actually came out and made a statement. So in regards to the explosions, which was at a explosion and fire at an ammunition factory in Esfahan, the ministry actually mentioned that it was due to small drone attacks, and they had actually shot down said drones. But they didn't provide any further information about the drones or anything of, I guess, clarity, anything that would provide clarity on where these drones came from. And then today, actually, CNN reported on this exact incident. But the way that their report came out was actually quite interesting too, because they didn't point any fingers. They didn't really say, anyone's taken responsibility, or that they think that it's due to, Israel or any other country for that matter. And in fact, they made it very clear that the Israeli Defense Force declined to comment, and no U.S. spokespersons made any comments about it either. So it's still quite confusing, actually.
But I mean, who is it?
We don't know.
Finland? I guess we don't know.
We don't know.
But I mean, targeted drone strikes.
Well, there's on Persian Twitter. There's some ideas floating around as well.
I thought there was a report that it was Israel.
No, it's a false report.
And that Israel had said it was.
Seems.
It's a false report.
It's a false report.
Then I misspoke.
Yeah, there's no confirmation of that fact, and in fact, the IDF has not taken any responsibility or accepted that. So, as of right now, it's
such a it's like the water crisis. I mean, it's such a testament to how much shit is going down in Iran, that these things happen and they barely register.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this would be a major story. Not that it isn't a story, but, you know, explosions, munitions factories being blown up. I mean, but there's just so much to talk about with respect to Iran. I feel like to a certain extent the Western media like just throws its hand in the air and goes, oh, well, that's another thing happening in Iran. What do we know? You know?
Yeah,
so then you have to depend on sources inside Iran and
Exactly.
the Iranian media, the state media, which is of course nonsense. And
Yeah. And I mean, just to add to what you're saying, CNN only reported on the explosion and the fire in Isfahan. But as I was looking at, you know, the varying reports and looking through social media and things like that, there is actually reports of incidents in Tabriz, in Dezful, which I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes.
Hey man, shout out to my people. That's full. That's you know, you don't know that's full.
I was just hoping I was pronouncing it correctly. I do know, but
Beautiful, hopeful, there's full.
Come on, the who's the stop people are going to start picketing our show with your ignorance about
I was trying
that's
to make sure I was saying it right, actually. And
somewhere between Ahvaz and Abadan, near that area is Desful.
okay.
Right?
See, learned something new
Sure.
today. And one of the other things I read about was actually that there was reports of air raid sirens in a place called Nozhe Air Base, which, like you're saying, you know, there's so much information, so much news coming out of Iran that we really don't know what's fact and fiction. But, you know, to hear about something like that, if in fact it is true, that would be...
You know what my takeaway is? My takeaway is completely devoid of knowing any of the facts. You know, I fully, I will issue the disclaimer that I know nothing about what happened with these drone strikes. My takeaway is that is an unstable country. There's volatile shit going on.
Absolutely.
In Iran, you know, because that is not business as usual.
No.
You know, and it comes in the midst of, I mean, think about how much is going on, you know, between the currency and the economy and the water, the environmental stuff that we've been talking about, and the protests and the demonstrations and the jailings and the executions and
no shortage for sure.
The international condemnation and yeah. So I wanted to. I don't know if you have it on your agenda to talk about Robert Malley.
I do.
Okay. feels like it was. I think it was at least 2 months ago that I did the essay saying, you know, step aside, Robert Malley. Today I see some people saying that, but and I know there's other folks who've been saying it for a while now. But this guy, this is the special envoy for Iran that was the Biden administration guy,
That's
right?
Yeah.
So this guy comes out today. I think what he was trying to say was, we don't want to interfere, you know, we don't believe in imperialism or something.
I mean, if that's what he was trying to say, he did a horrible job.
Yeah, because what it came off as is we don't actually want regime change.
I mean, yeah, short of actually saying that,
Yeah.
I felt like that's the point he was trying to drive home. I mean, every chance he got, he kept on kind of, you know, advertising for diplomacy with the regime, with the Iranian regime. And I mean, I can understand why people have asked for his resignation, you know, on the heels of that interview, because really it almost seemed like he was an apologist for the regime.
Well, he's not representing the interests of Iranians around the world, that's for
definitely
sure.
Not.
Or Iranian Americans, because I mean, who are the people who are looking for diplomacy with this regime right now? I mean, maybe a handful of, forgive me, but Nyack-related people still.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, who would be? This is that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
This is again the delta between where the community is at, where Iranians are at, and where the international statespeople or whatever haven't caught up to that, or more likely, they don't give a fuck.
They don't want to. Yeah. Exactly.
They want it. It behooves them to, you know, hedge their bets. Looks like the regime isn't going necessarily. Maybe it isn't. We should continue our, you know, and we have a lot of money to gain from a nuclear deal.
What was really surprising for me with this interview, I mean, you know, for months now, we've been seeing that he's not, Malley, I mean, he's not representative of the Iranian people, and obviously he's not trying to push an agenda that is on the same page as what the Iranian people want. But what was surprising to me is that he was so, I don't even know, you know, he was so he almost wanted to get the point across that he was
cavalier.
That he's not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, I think he was asked specifically about the JCPOA, and I thought, okay, he's going to try and maneuver his way out of the question, or he's going to try and say something that could be interpreted. But no, very, very clear. He said, he still pointed towards diplomacy, and he, in fact,
but that's got to be marching orders. I got to think that this guy is not acting. I mean, he's not some rogue.
I mean, even if it was,
I think that there's a conversation that's been had with the administration, and that he's the fall guy, has to go out and say this.
Yeah.
And the conversation is, we still want to do a deal with Iran.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely bigger than just him for sure. But I would have thought that someone who's this wasn't his first interview for sure, right? I thought he would have answered in a more politically correct way, so to speak.
Yeah, and after a lot of double talk from the administration, it's kind of shocking.
It is. It was very shocking.
The way it's delivered. That's why I don't know if. I mean, if he'd come and said, Iran, we support the self-determination of the Iranian people. We're not going to launch an attack on Iran or something like that but we'll do whatever we can to support the Iranian people's choice. But he said, we're not interested in regime change, like some wording that literally sounds like we're happy for the mullahs to stay in power. I
mean, the only thing that he said that could be, somewhat politically correct and exactly maneuvering a maneuvering answer was that he said that that the U.S. is interested in the human rights aspect of things, but that they have to compartmentalize. Yeah. So again, not very helpful.
But yeah, I mean, here we are, right? 5 months in, and the guy from the president of Jason Borrell or Jason Bourne, the Bourne Identity guy, whatever is it? What's the EU president's name?
Joseph Borrell.
Joseph Borrell. That was distortion humor. I intentionally don't want to say his name. These people. I mean, it's we're seeing the real face of some of the stuff. There's only so much you can. I'm gonna put it to Nikahang too, because Nikahang was one of the people who Kowsar, who's coming up, was one of the people who he's been calling for the IRGC to be on the terrorist list in Canada for years, and this goes way back to the Harper government in Canada. It's pre-2014 that they had put the motion forward to and still for all of the flowery words from the government of Canada and from countries in the EU, still that equivocation, that hesitation is very telling.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was months ago where people were seeing the videos of Trudeau walking alongside protesters and things like that, and I think we actually talked about it on one of the shows.
Of course. And
we were saying that it's nice to see these videos, but in action, there's still so much missing, even in a country like Canada.
Well, it's the equivalent of Robert Malley saying, we care about, it's how much do you care, really?
Yeah, really.
What are you doing?
Action?
You're not enforcing the sanctions that you have. You're not interested in really seemingly hearing what the Iranian diaspora community is screaming to say, but please, find a way to stop enabling this regime.
Actually, that's something else that he said. He pointed to the sanctions and said, well, we have implemented a new set of sanctions, as if that's some sort of, help at this point.
Yeah, Robert Malley. And in the meantime, okay, let me guess you're the third thing you're going to talk about. Did you hear about this couple that was dancing?
That's my third point. Yeah,
okay,
that video.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the video actually came out, I think it was in November or at the end of October, because the couple was actually arrested in early November.
That's
and so for anyone who doesn't know about this video, which I'm sure many people have now shared it and it's gone viral yet again, but there's a video of a young couple dancing on a street in Tehran with the Azadi Tower in the background. And it's
very innocently dancing.
Very innocently
They're
dancing.
not twerking. It's not like it's not a provocative dance.
Not at all.
And they're fully, they're fully dressed up and they're just doing, it's kind of a lovely waltz or something.
It is, yeah. And might I add that the couple is engaged. So even under the Islamic law or whatever you will,
I did not know that.
Oh, no, they are. They're an actual engaged couple. So this video came out. They were arrested as a result of this video. And so what happened is that today they were given a sentence, and each of them was given 10.5 years in prison for dancing on the street. and for posting this video. And aside from the 10 and a half year
fucking madness
prison sentence, it's absurd. They were also told that they have a 2-year ban on any sort of social media, and also I think their passports were probably revoked because they're not allowed to leave the country for 2 years as well.
How do you get a 10-year sentence and then the 2 years?
That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if you're in prison for 10 and a half years,
they will bail out probably very soon.
I see.
Yeah,
okay.
and so after
even if they're out on bail, they can't go on social media or leave the country. Yeah.
I told you, like, I don't know when, but it's a way of like earning income for government to put people in jail and then bail out and have
especially with the price of bail that we've been seeing. That's one of the tactics that the regime has been using recently, is to put the bail amounts at such high increments. Astiyaj
Haqiqi, I think is her name.
Yep.
She's 21 years old, and Amir Mohammad Ahmadi. It is, I'm never going to stop saying this because we cannot ever stop being shocked by this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
10 years in jail for dancing in front. I mean, it's like
with your fiance.
Yeah. That's with your fiance innocently in front of the Azadi Tower.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I can't. I can't get my head around it.
No. I mean, can you? Yeah. Can you imagine, like, if, let's start a new country, and let's start a law where, I mean, it's so heartbreaking. It's so insane. It's so insane. We got Saba coming in, and and Nikahang. Everybody on the show has been, arrested. I mean, but I mean, you can't sing, you can't dance, you can't. What is?
One of the things that I was actually reading about this couple is that for the last 3 months, their families had been silenced in fear because it's been just 3 months of them not knowing what is going to happen to their kids. I mean,
well, and also as Hila Sadiqi was saying in that interview we did 2 or 3 weeks ago, the families don't want to say something in case they might make the situation worse.
That's right,
or
exactly.
So they're paralyzed. You can't even talk about this injustice. It's it's really, really, really dark stuff.
Have you heard about the first concert that happened in Iran like last week? There's a concert happening in Iran. So as I told you, it's like musician, they boycott the concerts, and they so there's a guy, his name is, I think, Zanko, something like that. He went on stage and he only has like 7 or 8 songs, and he do the whole repertoire like twice, and the Wazir Ershad said that this is the best concert that happened.
Wow.
And the music you have to hear, it's like
horrible.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you should have brought it for us.
I've heard one of his songs actually.
Masalan room.
That's the one.
What is it?
It's, oh my gosh.
So he's like a state sanctioned. Like, what kind of music is it?
It's
like rock.
No, it's meant to be kind of like upbeat, poppy kind of, right? I think, at least what I've heard.
The most cheesy way of Persian music, So,
yeah, I saw Babak Amini again on the weekend, and he was echoing, I think, what you were saying, that he said he hears from musicians in Iran all the time that it's such a dire situation.
Oh yeah.
Especially on the heels of COVID. Like they're just. He told me that a guy he knew who was kind of a virtuoso guitarist, and had collected some guitars, like 6 of these. I can't remember now exactly what it was, but he told me that the guy had called Babak and said that he only has one of them left.
Wow.
Because he had to sell all his instruments because he doesn't have any money.
Oh, that is so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're probably hearing this from a lot of people all the time.
Yeah, it's really. Yeah.
Talking about the arts community in Iran, we talked about it on the last show about the film festival that's going on in Iran.
Fajr
Film Festival, yeah. I saw reports of, and his name escapes me right now, but he's one of the most prominent Iranian actors. He's fairly old, and he actually put out a statement saying that he would not be attending, and that was, unheard of for someone of his stature to not attend this festival. But I mean, we're seeing it across the board. So,
all right. Well, let's get to our. Thank you, Pega.
Thank you,
Shaya. Let's see if we can bring Saba in. My first guest here. Let's go to our first guest. Our first guest is a singer and Sufi dancer who has captured public attention by singing a song that is. Now widely shared. It's become an anthem of this revolution, as we said, sung at most demonstrations and rallies globally. Take a listen to this.
شهر بی آیین شده ای مردم غمگین شده ای عالمی بیدین شده از عهد ننگین شما.
There you go. One of the live performances of this piece that has now it's become something of an iconic piece now in video. That's a Bizaram as Dine Shoma and the sounds of the powerful voice of Saba Zameni. So Saba moved to Canada from Iran just a few months ago. She studied traditional singing and music at the Conservatory of Music in Tehran. She released an album called Jian in 2018. Since the uprising, as you may know, she has been outspoken about the regime in Iran, has performed at demonstrations and rallies, and her videos online have received millions of views. She's also been part of the Canadian leg of the Shahi Najafi tour, performing alongside him and his band. She is riveting to watch, and right now, Saba Zameni joins me in the Roqe Studio today. Hello.
Hello. I'm very happy to see you here.
It's so nice to have you here in person. The last time we did this was Zoom.
That was
so
virtual,
here you
right?
are in person, and it's fabulous. I have to say, first of all, I don't know if at a time of Enqilab we say these two things to each other, but I mean, I feel like saying congratulations on how much attention your work and your voice has gotten in the last few months. Does it feel that way? Does it feel like something I should congratulate you for?
I was just thinking about this you mentioned right now. I'm not sure if it need to be congrats something, but because we're in the middle of very strange situation. But thank you so much. About Bizaram az Din Shoma, I didn't know that it goes viral like this, but
and normally for an artist to get millions of views is a great thing. In this moment, it's hard to, especially as an Iranian, you don't want to be seen celebrating your own success. But tell me a little bit about, and Sabajan, we've agreed that you'll speak English and Persian, whatever feels comfortable to a certain extent if you need to. But tell me what the last few months have been like for you, both in terms of your relationship to what's happening in Iran with the revolution and the prominence that you've had in terms of your music and your voice being out there.
Mm-hmm. So everybody knows about this tough situation in Iran. Each of us try to do something about these strange days. They go so fast. And one of these days, I was so angry. I was frustrated about something, about a really bad news about Kian P. Falek. And I remember I was so angry. There was a drum set in my place, and I was just started to sing Bizaram az Din Shoma. I've listened it somewhere so randomly on Instagram, and it sounds so, so special to me. So I was thinking, I need to sing these kind of words right now, just right now. And I started to sing, and there was a source of energy, source of anger, but it helps. So I just sang it. I posted it on my Instagram, and boom, like tomorrow, I was like, oh, what's happening here?
Yeah.
People, right.
And it was just your voice and a drum.
Yeah, just voice and drum. That was so all of a sudden, and I realized the next day, I realized people really needed these kind of words. They're so serious this time. It's like they're angry. They're full of, complicated energies. They don't know what goes to happen this time, and that everything was so complicated, and that's it.
There's a defiance. There is an anger to this song that, if I contrast it, for example, to Baroye, the great Shervin song, that is passionate, but it's almost more mournful. This is, when watching you sing and perform it, it's very powerful, and I can feel you channeling that anger that you felt, and I'm sure that's part of why it's resonated so much and got the millions of views. I want to ask you a bit about this piece, because for those of us who grew up in the diaspora, it's new to me, but I know for many Iranians inside Iran and around the world, they knew it immediately, or they were familiar with it somehow. Tell me a bit about this piece. Where did this originate from, and how did you first find it?
First of all, let me tell you something about. All day we mention some power, some hidden power in all the women all around the world, even in Iran, especially in Iran. And to me, people need that kind of power in some voice to shout and say their word and just spread it out, like people need some woman voice to say these kind of things bravely. I'm not saying I'm brave, I'm the brave one, but I was so angry. That's it. That's so simple. But after this, I searched it up about, and I found a video that belonged to some ritual show for Muharram. It's like a festival, but it's kind of complicated, but never mind. And I searched it up. They filmed it in a place in Yazd city in Iran, and the very particular piece of this was the singer lead people to respond him. And he
it's
was
a call and response.
Yeah,
kind
call
of,
and respond. And everything was so arranged, like people know about the words, people know about the rhymes, people knew about everything, and that was so. I was so grateful to could do that, like all by my own, and that was so beautiful. And because of the poem, because of the words, the poet one, the man who said, all those words, banned from, doing his work.
The writer of this,
in Yaz, and the singer as well.
Oh,
and they pushed them like under pressure, and they questioning them all over, and they like, okay, we quit. And there was these kind of things so dangerous in Iran,
Sure.
These words.
But can I ask you, the song? I mean, if I Google translate it, which I've done, a lot of it is, I hate your religion. It's an angry song directed at religion, But is it in terms of the way you've interpreted it and how it's resonating, would you describe it as an anti-religion song or an anti-Islamic Republic piece, or how are we supposed to interpret that?
The thing is, I realized that there's nothing disrespectful, thing to any religions, but it's kind of said, I hate the way you worship God. Your God is
your
not
interpretation
our God.
of quote unquote Islam, right?
Yeah, exactly. Your God is not ours. Like, we're, first of all, are human. We need love, we need power inside, we need everything, and we can use Islamic things to live our life. It's enough. This is it. It's not all the things around the world about our religion. It's not a big deal to change our life, change our point of view to something not necessary.
Saba, do you feel like when you gain so many followers or get so much attention, your audience has grown and these millions of views and so much interest, do you feel a responsibility now that you didn't maybe feel a few months ago? I mean, do you feel somehow like you have to keep responding to what's going on, that now you have a much bigger platform? Tell me about that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and now it's goes harder.
Is it pressure?
Not anything like pressure, but yeah, I feel some responsibility now more than before. I'm pretty aware of all artists has their own responsibility to use their art as a tool to say what's going on in that particular time. And when something, I didn't experience that before. I experienced many of performances and concerts and many of these kind of things, but that one is so different.
What's that? What did you experience?
As I mentioned, I woke up the next day and I was faced with too many messages, too many followers, too many likes and shares and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, now it's more serious than yesterday. I should do something to do not disappoint people who this is kind of hard because people, everybody wants something different from you, and they think you're a leader now, you're not a leader. You just
they have expectations of
you just say your word
probably
about
who
your
you
art.
should be supporting and what you should be saying, and
and I'm seeing that it's kind of I don't know how can I say that, but
try to say it in Persian.
Persian. It's hard to say that in Persian too.
Okay.
وقتی که یه روز میبینی که برای من هیچ وقت فیمس شدن به معنی این نبوده که تعداد زیادی آدمی از فردا تو رو دوست داشته باشن، چون این it comes one day and it can go the next day. Easily. And نمیخوام که اینجور باشه، چون با این aim که من میخوام این موزیک رو بذارم برای اینکه دیده بشم. People can see me and see how can I sing powerful and how can I I'm out of Iran now. I'm brave enough to shout. And نه این برای این نبود. فقط میخواستم که یک خشمی رو از ته دل فریاد بزنم که بعد فهمیدم این فریاد خیلی های دیگه هست که دوست دارن بشنونش، فریادش بزنن و it gives courage to them, to keep going.
خب همین میخواستم بپرسم از اینا که مسیج فرستادم به شما when you got all these messages and you continue to, I'm sure. Tell me about something that's stuck out to you, or something that's really moved you in terms of what you've heard from people, maybe even people inside Iran, who have found inspiration in what you've done in your work. Does anything come to mind in particular? Somebody's message or somebody that reached out to you?
Immediately after I posted on my Instagram, I found some YouTube video. They mixed my video with some of my pictures and my videos, and the تیتر خبر این بود که سبا زامنی دستگیر شد بعد از they arrested her after, just like Shervin Hajipur, and we so sad about this. We disappointed why they doing this, and I was like, hello, I'm in Canada. they can't do that anymore. And اینجور اتفاقا افتاد ولی they couldn't do nothing, at the end of the day. And چی گفتین دیگه؟
Well, I mean, I imagine you heard from a lot of young women. That's what I'm imagining. Is that true? Did you hear from a lot of young women in Iran who just go, thank you, or you're my inspiration or something like that?
Yeah. Most of them say thank you to me because this song helps them to, raise up, raise their voice, and stand up for the other day, for the next day, and with hope and power. And they listen to this repeatedly all day, all night, and they can't stop to listen to this. They sing with me all day. They shout in their home, or they played in on the street and everywhere. And that was so and I saw a couple of video all around the world, like USA, like Spain, like Italy, and all around the world. They play in their protests. They play my song, and everybody started to sing with it. And that was a sign for me so what should I do now? What should I sing now? I maybe I should quit jazz or quit blues or but I was like, oh, what should I do now? And then Shaheen Najafi recommended me to sing this song in his concert, and I was like, okay, that would be so good. I can,
I was going to ask you about the relationship with Shaheen and you, because you've done a few shows now, right? And did you guys know each other before?
No, one of my friend in USA منو معرفی کرد به شاهین. He approached me, and
you must have been aware of his music, obviously.
Yeah. I loved his music always, his words and all the his mind, actually. I love his mind. And but before I published this video, he came to me and asked me if I can sing with him in his tour. And then when I published it and all this happened, he was like, wait a minute, we can do something with it. Can you improvise something on it? I was for sure, let me do it. And I was started. The genre was rock, which was so helpful for these words. You can, spread all your any feelings in you. You can, and you could, we just performanced it, and the interesting thing was all the people in concert, they know the words.
Of course.
They started to, hey Saba, start to sing Bizaram az din shoma once again. Oh please, once. And I was like, that was خیلی قلبم خوشحال میشد و هنوز هم میشه از این اتفاق. ولی nothing changed in my heart, deep down in my heart, about the thing is happening in Iran right now. It's not about me to goes viral or goes famous. It's about the revolution.
That's good. That's a good segue, because before we're going to get to a song that you're graciously going to actually perform here in the studio. But before we go there, I was going to ask you actually whether you, I mean, it's obviously been a good few months in terms of the recognition you've received, etc. Do you, and there, you had to leave for obvious reasons. I mean, being jailed, for not being able to even do your craft, your be the singer that you are in Iran. Do you still feel though that on some level, maybe not guilty, but do you feel on some level like you wish you were there? You wish you were in Iran, helping, I don't know, on the front lines, protesting, doing what you could?
Yeah, I was telling my mom, fortunately I'm here, Mom. If I was there now,
now
you still has that challenge with me going to jail again and again and again, and it goes, everything goes worst after.
Yes.
If I were there, and I wish I could be there, but it was so scary too. To me, just thinking about it, remind me all those days came to me that day. But I really wish I could be there, with my brothers and sisters fighting for their,
Well, you'd be no good to any of us in jail. We don't want you there in jail and silenced. And so what you're doing is very powerful, and I'm grateful that you're in Canada and Toronto so that you're able to do that. And I'm so grateful that you're here in the studio. So now we've talked about you're going to actually perform a song for us in the studio, which is fantastic. And I think Shaya and I are going to, we've just kind of it's going to be an improvisation, but we're going to Shaya's going to get behind the piano and I'm going to get behind the drums, and we're going to try and support you not that you need us, but the song is actually a tune of yours that I love, that people can find on Spotify or on your platforms, on your website. It's called Shadowless. Tell us about this piece that you're about to sing.
Okay. I'm gonna say this in Farsi.
Yes.
Shadowless or بیسایگی یه روزی شروع شد که من قرار بود با هیلا صدیقی روی اینستاگرام لایو داشته باشیم با هم دیگه. ازم خواسته بود که یک آهنگی از آهنگهای خودم یا ایمپرووایز انتخاب داشته باشم که بخونم توی اون برنامه. شب شعر بود در واقع. من فقط یه ویدیوی خیلی رندوملی پیدا کردم که فقط اینسترومنتال بود و پیانو نواخته میشد. شروع کردم یکی از شعرهای سایه هوشنگ ابتهاج، شاعر مورد علاقم رو روش خوندم. اون روزها من خیلی به اون کلمات نیاز داشتم، چون دقیقاً وسط یک چالش خیلی بزرگی بودم توی زندگیم که میدونستم به زودی از زندان حکمی برام میاد که دوباره باید برم.
کی بود؟
2 years ago.
Okay.
Before I go to the jail again. فقط خوندمش. شروع کردم به خوندن و احساس کردم در کنار اون غم‌انگیز بودن آهنگ یک حس قدرت و امیدواری و یه کورسوی امیدی تهش داری میبینی که انگار که تو رو نگه میداره بالا، انگار بوستاپت میکنه، انگار که داره بهت میگه در این سرای بی کسی به در نمیزند، ولی تو میدونی که بالاخره به در میزند. میدونی که ته این سرای بی کسی چیزی وجود داره که خیلی ارزشش بیشتر از این حزنیه که تو الان در دلت داری. قراره که یک درس بزرگی بگیری از توی این ناکامی ها. و بعد من شروع کردم به خوندن. شروع کردم برای هیلا خوندم. هیلا خیلی خوشش اومد. از اون ور پدرم اومد توی اتاق و به هم گفتش که اینی که خوندی آهنگ کی بود؟ گفتم که خودم خوندم، همین الان چیزش کردم. گفت میتونی یه بار دیگه بخونی؟ گفتم آره ولی نمیتونم همون جوری بخونم، قاعدتا فرق میکنه. گفت بخون و ضبطش کن. ضبطش کردم و 1 ماه بعد از یکی از دوستام خواستم که ارنجش بکنه و شروع شد بیسایگی. یکی دیگه از دلایلی که اسمشو گذاشتم shadowless or بیسایگی، you know the artistic name of هوشنگ ابتهاج was سایه. And I was thinking oh my god, I love him so much. I never know if I can handle it, if someday he's gone or not. But بیسایگی it belongs to someday که سایه دیگه نیست. و اون غمم تو دلم بود. اینجوری شد که it burns.
Okay, well let's do this live in the Roqe Studio. This is Saba Zameni. So let me get behind the drums. Shaya, come on in here.
Are you sure? She sings very well.
I know. The only problem with this piece is that you and I are going to ruin it. But we'll try our best. And this is Saba Zameni performing the piece Shadowless here in the Roqe Studio. Give us 1 second. We'll set up.
I'm coming.
کسی به در نمیزنه، به دشت پر ملال ما پرنده پر نمیزنه. یکی ز شب گرفتگاه چراغ بر نمی کند کسی به کوچه سار شب در سحر نمی زند. در انتظار این غبار بی صفا دری کس شبی چنین سپید سر نمیزند ای دل خراب من دیگر خرابتر نمی شود که خنجر غمت از این خرابتر نمی زند نه سایه دارم و نه بر بیفکنندم و سزاست اگر نه بر درخت تر کسی تبر نمیزند کسی تبر نمیزند کسی به در نمیزند
Wow.
Thank you.
That was
Thank you for joining us.
that was joining us.
Yeah.
We joined you.
You guys
You
joining
are
me.
amazing. No,
You guys was
you are
yeah,
amazing.
thank you.
That was really, really. I was mesmerized listening to your voice. I could, close my eyes and start playing there. Thank you so much.
That was
for
one
performing.
of the best versions that I've ever performed.
Oh,
This song.
that's wonderful. Have you ever
A good
performed it? Maybe
feeling.
it's the only version.
Just
That's
with the original backing track.
That's
not in live.
Saba Zameni and the song Shadowless. Shaya on piano there. Thank you. That was thank you for being here. Thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for
Thank you.
being as honest and as giving as you are.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see you in person.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you. So good.
This is Roqe, episode 234. Can a free Iran set a new standard for unity? Let's go to Washington, D.C. for my next guest, and someone I'm quite honored to say is one of our regulars at this point here on Roqe. He's been joining us with some consistency through the current uprising in Iran. Nikahang Kowsar is a distinguished Iranian-Canadian cartoonist, journalist, and blogger. Besides his famous cartooning and commentary in the past, Nikahang is very much known these days amongst Iranians for his regular presence on Iran International, BBC Persian, and Radio Farda. He also runs a website called abangoniran.org, which covers Iran's water crisis. He's going to join me by Zoom here, so you might hear my audio change a little bit because I'm going to be in Zoom audio with Nikahang. Nikahang Kowsar joins me from Washington, D.C. right now. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. Nice to be with you on this beautiful day.
Oh, is it a beautiful day in
It
Washington?
is. It
Oh,
is.
well, it's not as beautiful here in gray and snowy Toronto, but I'll take your word for it. Listen, it's always a pleasure to have you on this show and to hear
Likewise.
your insights. I do want to point something out because you've been public about it recently. And before we get into talk of Iran, some of us know you've been dealing with fibromyalgia for some time now, which is, as I've always known it, a chronic disorder that causes pain and tenderness throughout your body. It can lead to fatigue and trouble sleeping. You have been talking about this publicly about recently. How are you doing?
Not so good. I've been tolerating a number of flare-ups in the past few days, and I have to add IBS. That's also something that's really painful. And I was telling a friend the other day, he wanted to plan so we could meet after a while. And I told him, look, 2 days out of 7 in the week, I'm fighting with fibromyalgia. 2 days I'm fighting with IBS, and 2 days I have both of them. So there's just one day, but I don't know which day of the week is that I don't have either of these two. But I'm blessed that although I have all these painful situations, I'm still able to work. I'm still able to read. I'm still able to communicate. Sometimes the memory fog kills. Sometimes, like right now, I'm seeing 2 of you, not just one. So this is the double vision I get, but still I'm talking to you and I think I can understand what I'm talking about. So that's good.
Yeah, you sound very lucid. I mean, this might say, I'm sure this is a naive question, but does stress, I mean, if you were upset or heartbroken or dealing, emotionally with, say, the situation in Iran, does that amplify the pain of fibromyalgia and IBS?
It does. There are lots of triggers that actually initiate the flare up, and one of them is stress. And as a journalist, I'm always monitoring the situation. I'm talking to people inside the country. I have to review most of the reports that I get about the water situation, about drought, about rain, and it's painful. It's honestly painful, and you understand that so many people are having miserable lives because of the stupidity of the leadership and the bad strategies that they have held up all these years. The regulations do not work, and the parliament is actually breaking the law continuously and doesn't care for the environment. We have 411 projects that lack environmental assessments and environmental permits that are being approved by the parliament. And parliament, by that, is actually acting against Article 50 of the Constitution of the Islamic Republic. So you see, you have a lot of criminals approving projects for the benefit of a few.
Well, now that I've learned that dealing with this stuff makes your pain even greater, here we go into a conversation about atrocities in Iran. So you'll forgive me. But I'll
No. Go on.
Let's start with water. I mean, one of the nice things I was saying earlier in the show about having you on is I feel like you've got your finger on the pulse of so much of what's happening usually, that I can ask you about a number of different things, which I'm going to try to do today. But water is your area of study, and you've been focusing on the water supply crisis in Iran for some time. We've had you on to talk about it in depth before, along with other folks like Kaveh Madani. What is the latest on this situation, or I suppose more specifically, how has the percolating revolution of the last 5 months in Iran and the focus of the regime on that affected the addressing of the water situation?
Look, for a few months, the media was totally focused on the unrest, on the demonstrations, the arrests, rightfully so. But the problem is the water crisis is worsening. It's not just about the little rain we're receiving. It's also about managing the water we have. So it's not just supplying water, but how much water do we consume? And a lot of water is consumed in the agricultural sector. We have bad irrigation policies. We choose the bad seeds that consume more water. We're not supposed to produce water-consuming products in an arid land like Iran. We have to produce, let's say, the ones that you use less water, but you get more, let's say, valuable products and sell them, export them, then import cheaper cereal, like, let's say, wheat, but don't waste the water on them. That's the important factor. But because of the regime's bad policies and the sanctions that are imposed on the Islamic Republic because of its bad policies, people will suffer. So the fact of the matter is that, look, for thousands of years, Iranians knew how to consume water, how to manage their water resources. We had qanats, we had different types of irrigation that worked out very well. And even in the, let's say, Andalusia, they were practicing those types of irrigation methods. And some of them were even exported to the new land, America. You can, and when you go to New Mexico or the Colorado Plateau, you see the irrigation type called acequia. It's originally coming from the Middle East.
Well, there is an ongoing irony with the water crisis situation in Iran, the water bankruptcy situation, because I always remember, one of the great discoveries, one of the great inventions of our Iranian past was the water supply system, right?
Yeah. And it was sustainable. But in the last 70 years, we have lost our way. And instead of caring for the water, we wasted lots of water. And in the last mainly 3 decades, we have destroyed a lot of our groundwater resources all around the country, and the lands are subsiding. And when the land subsides, you have less volume under the ground to store water. So desertification is a result of that. As you know, we call the desert biaban in Persian, but originally it comes from a waterless situation, biaban, without having lack of water being waterless. So this is what the regime has done in the last few decades. And I'm sorry to say that because of little education on this side about water resources, about natural resources, about the importance of water conservation, many people inside our country have not been aware of what has been happening. And they have been living in a bubble. And right now, they don't know why there are so many people migrating from rural areas to city margins and shanty towns. And they don't know why the consumption rate is so high. So it's...
Nick, when you say it's getting worse, I mean, it was a couple of years ago, I suppose, or maybe a year and a half ago or something, that we had those big demonstrations when we heard about the dire situation in Khuzestan and the water crisis, et cetera. Are you saying it's as bad or worse than it was then even?
It is worse. Look, the population is no less. The consumption is no less. We have less snow in many parts on many peaks. So that means less water in the major dams that are connected to those basins. And then whenever there's not enough water in the dams, the government actually depletes the aquifers and pulls out lots of groundwater because they need to satisfy part of the population. And things don't work like that. And it's like a domino effect. And it will affect many parts of the country because of this bad way of managing water resources.
It's really it's quite horrifying, really, because you know, as you said in the beginning, I mean, we are so focused, correctly so, on executions or, you know, people being rounded up or shot out in the streets and kids dying, etc., that some of these other issues have been pushed or under the rug or to the side for now, and yet these are whether it's the currency crisis or the economy or the water supply crisis, these are major issues. And one of the things that kind of breaks my heart is that there's a fair bit of, you know, while we're heartbroken, there's a fair bit of excitement or optimism or promise of what can, a new Iran and new leadership and the end of this regime. But the reality is that I almost hate to even say, but when you talk about a situation like this water supply crisis, there's no way to fix this overnight, right? I mean,
No.
even a free, democratic, ideal regime tomorrow, version of Iran that we all want tomorrow, is not going to be able to undo this without.
It actually takes time and lots of effort, Jian. But let me tell you something. I was reading this report last week that because of Tehran's air pollution, 45,000 people die each and every year. That means if the government is in charge of managing the air quality based on the Iranian constitution, 45,000 people are murdered because of bad pollution policies, bad air act. We have air law from, I think, 2017, but nothing has happened, and it's getting worse. So we talk about, let's say, the people who have lost their lives in the 2022 unrest, and we cry for them. We mourn their losses. But look, 45,000 individuals die each and every year because of polluted air in Tehran. If that's true, it's a report, so I'm not sure. Is it more than this or less? But let's say 45,000 based on what they're saying. And we miss to note that how important this is. And we have thousands of people in different cities like Iraq, Isfahan, and other industrial cities that are dying because of bad fuel, about, let's say, very tiny particles that enter their lungs, and so many other things. We have water contamination in so many parts of the country because of using bad fertilizers and other stuff. Look, Iran has to be studied because of the effects of bad policies that have turned the whole situation into an environmental injustice. We have to fight for environmental justice, and the politicians, the ones who are fighting for unity or the ones who want to separate this part or another part of the country, look, they don't care for the environment. They don't care for.
But that's, I mean, if I were to ask a question that probably sounds ridiculous, but is caring about the environment somehow un-Islamic? I mean, if you're the Islamic Republic, does that mean that I mean, what part of this is not the hijab now? What part of trying to run a country as this regime does is not caring about pollution or water?
Look, the fact is that you can exploit natural resources to gain money, and the IRGC and its partners are doing so. So a very small portion of the population is making money out of misusing natural resources.
And not that the rest of the world is any sort of paragon of excellence when it comes to the environment. There's countries all over the place that they're doing it, but it is a dire concern in Iran, and every time you turn a corner with this regime, if it's not the suppression of basic rights, it's something like this where you sort of go, how many times can we look at this and realize how atrocious this situation is in this country? On the weekend, a 5.9 magnitude earthquake hit the city of Roqe, which is the west in the West Azerbaijan province in northwest Iran. That was Saturday night, I think. You've said that the effects of this earthquake may not entirely be unrelated to the water supply crisis as well. How do we draw the link between those two?
There's been this talk in the past few years that depleting aquifers changes the weight of the top layers of the tectonic blocks, and it can help trigger active faults in some places, the stress and strain change, the usual norms change, and it can have a trigger effect. Scientists have been studying this in California, where there's been lots of groundwater misuse, and they have depleted so many of the aquifers over there. And last, I think it was about 10 days ago, after the first earthquake in Hoi in January, because Hoi has been experiencing lots of earthquakes. It's a very active zone. So after the first earthquake, one of my classmates, who is now a very famous seismologist in Iran and runs major research institute, he said that we have to consider this fact that the depletion of water and also the disappearance, in a way, of Lake Urumia is having could have a major effect in triggering these earthquakes. So this is a factor we have to consider. And because we have lots of active faults in many parts of the country where people are actually living and using water, and many of the aquifers, the groundwater resources, have been overexploited. This could happen in those sections. And the other thing is that wherever you have groundwater depletion, you have land subsidence, and land subsidence has negative effects on your buildings, on your homes, and you get lots of cracks in the whole structure. So that actually weakens the structure of the homes of ordinary people who don't have enough money to make stronger homes, to build, let's say, homes that could resist the earthquakes in those regions. So you have a silent earthquake called land subsidence, and then when you get the major earthquake, many people lose their lives and their homes because of that. So in a way, many of these things are connected, but we don't talk about them so often.
Although in general, Iran is in an earthquake risk zone, right? I mean, I always remember Tehran is at risk of potential earthquakes, right?
It is. And look, earthquake is a natural phenomenon. We are the homes that we build, the structures that we build in seismic zones is the unnatural thing to do. So first of all, we don't build the right structures, and then we overpopulate these seismic parts of the country, and we think that we're doing a good job expanding the cities. In 1989, when Rafsanjani became the president and he appointed Karbaschi to become the mayor of Tehran, many were saying, oh, Tehran is going to be a beautiful city. But some people told him that, look, Tehran is not in a very good situation. An overpopulation of this city and this town is not going to be good news, because we're awaiting a very powerful, a major earthquake in the future. And a group of Japanese scientists actually worked with Iranian scientists in the 90s, and their predictions are really scary, that if one of the faults in southeastern Tehran, in the Ray area, becomes active again, we could possibly even see around 1 million casualties. No. And that's not something to ignore. Yeah. So we have 3 major faults near Tehran: the northern Tehran fault, the Ray fault, and the Moshafashan fault. And these are really powerful faults, and we are seeing very minor earthquakes once in a while. But when we get a major earthquake, unfortunately, we will see a lot of victims, and that's really sad.
And there's been word that there's these, when it comes to earthquakes now, in some parts of the world, they're using there's state-sponsored alerts that people can get on their phones. But I'm presuming that they don't have that. We don't have that anymore.
No, we don't have it in Iran right now. I guess it was China who that was working on these technologies. People had applications on their phones that would alert them right when there was something happening under the ground. So they knew in how many seconds in different areas based on your GPS locators, you would feel the tremor. So it would warn you, and you had a few seconds to save yourself. So that's something that saved lots of lives in different parts of China. But in Hoi, in other parts, like in the province of Kermanshah a couple of years ago, where we had two major earthquakes in 2 continuous years, so many people died without being alerted. So technology could help us, but we're not using it.
Let me, Nikahang, move to a couple of other things that have been at the top of people's minds as this uprising continues in Iran, and the revolution and the aspirations and desperations that come along with that. Your focus is not always just in the environment. You're a journalist. You've been a longtime commentator, blogger, etc. And you're there in DC. I know you've been attending demonstrations there. What do you make of the intensifying desire in some circles in the diaspora to want to appoint a leader to or have a leader to lead Iranians through a transition period, and this endorsement campaign we saw for Reza Pahlavi and calls for a coalition as well, etc. Do you think that these campaigns have been effective and or are necessary?
I have to say one thing, that I respect Prince Reza Pahlavi very much. He's one of the few people who understands the environmental situation in Iran. But I should add that these campaigns have not created a united coalition. There has been...
Not yet, anyway.
What?
Not yet, anyway, yeah.
Not yet, no. And the thing is... an individual started this campaign without actually talking to other people. He did it on his own. So, but I don't believe that he meant to harm the activities that could have taken place, but it didn't have a really good effect, to my knowledge and understanding.
Why is that?
Because is that
why is it not having? Is it because it becomes a distraction? Now we're debating who's a good leader and not, instead of focusing on the regime, or what is the, why does it not?
I think it was polarizing. One thing, it was polarizing, and two, in a democracy, you don't force people to approve somebody or disapprove that person. People were pushing individuals to join the Reza Pahlavi movement, if there is a Reza Pahlavi movement. But the other thing is that Reza Pahlavi didn't ask for any support to become a leader. He said that, look, I can be your... in a way, I don't want to say your attorney, your lawyer, your representative, and let's say talks with different leaders. I don't seek power. He mentioned that. But in the Iranian diaspora, you are either with the guy or against the guy. That's one big problem. And the other thing is that some people who have been after separating parts of Iran in the last few decades and were silent became louder. Although there's a very small portion of these individuals, but they became much louder. And this caused some reactions in social media. But one other thing I should add, Jian, is that many of us Iranians are couch activists. And the people in Iran are the ones who went to the streets and fought and really in person supported the families of people like Kian Pir Falak or Mahsa Jina Amini and others who were victims of the regime's brutality. But we who are living in peaceful communities in countries like the United States, in Canada, in Europe, are just sitting on our couches with our laptops or our cell phones and then fighting each other without any consequences.
Yeah.
So I think one big problem is us. One. Two, we don't have we really don't know what's happening on the ground in many parts of the country. We're not well connected. And some people inside the country believe that we do not understand them in a way they should be understood. So we are the ones who have to work harder. And we have to serve the people inside the country. Why are we supposed to choose a leader for them? They are the people who are fighting the regime. So we're just only supposed to support them. And Reza Pahlavi didn't want to become a leader. He wanted to just help them.
Yeah.
But the fact is, other groups who want a share of the whole cake or the power structure in the future are using their stooges to messing up the situation. And I don't like it.
And let's not pin all this on Reza Pahlavi. I find that the ardent supporters of different sort of prominent folks tend to sometimes be quite intolerant of some of the others, and it leads to this debate. Although, having said all that you've said, and I totally respect and understand it, I'm also sympathetic to those people out there who are aching for some sort of common voice that we can, and I mean, in a moment, I'm going to ask you about the EU and Canada and the still not having IRGC on the terrorist list, but to have some common voice, to have some common representatives or representative even that is speaking to these institutions, whether in the diaspora or not, that is a representative of the common sentiment amongst the Iranians. And we know that that's difficult to do from within Iran. So, the argument becomes it has to be somebody from outside. And so I'm sympathetic to all of that. People are tired of not having, not being able to do this in a more unified voice when we're speaking to the rest of the world,
Look, the fact is, if people want to serve the public inside the country, people who have a voice outside of the borders of Iran, they're welcome. Look, if different individuals meet with different politicians, not for their personal gain, but to actually pass the baton and give a voice to the people inside the country, that's great. But look, one important factor is that there's been always the talk that some figures are actually using the situation to gain fame and use it in the future of the Iran to become powerful individuals. Like some compare them to Aung San Suu Kyi, who was supported and then became a leader in Myanmar. But then we saw what happened to a portion of the country whose rights were actually abused.
Sure.
The weaker part of the country, of the population. But the important fact is that giving voice to the voiceless should be a mission of anyone who has a voice outside and has connections. And these voices can assist the people in the country without bringing up things that destroy any possible unity. So I think I should say the interview with the former Crown Prince of Iran by Manoto TV was divisive instead of bringing unity. And the campaign to start to endorse the Crown Prince didn't bring unity and caused divisions. So that's one thing. We have to do lots of crisis control, damage control after that, but we don't have smart people to do that. So that's one problem. The second thing is that giving voice to the voiceless doesn't need to be announced each and every day that I'm here to give voice to you. No, you have to just do it. It reminds me of what's the name? This part in Maverick. Don't think, just do.
But let me just to put an asterisk on this, that first of all, I mean, just to make sure we're covering the bases, as you've said, Reza Pahlavi didn't start that campaign. In fact,
No.
all of the evidence shows that he was actually he and his folks around him were surprised by it and sort of like, whoa, how are we supposed to deal with this? And of course, you can't go and criticize 300,000 people who've signed for him or whatever, but it's a delicate and weird situation. But the second thing is that there really is a lack of, as you said, nuance. I mean, if you actually read the petition itself, it's not saying please, I want this guy to be the king and have unchecked power. And I mean, it's kind of a, hey, we need let's find an adult in the room to help through the transition. I give my, but of course that gets somehow in the global Iranian community version of broken telephone. That becomes, 3 days later becomes, do you like this guy or not? And that's really not what the question was. Let me move, because I'm sensitive that I can't keep you forever. Let me move to I mentioned the EU and Canada, and this is something that you've talked about for a long time, about putting the IRGC on the terrorist list, and we go from broken telephone to the broken record here, because we keep talking about this, and for, I guess, to a certain extent, for some of us in the community, it seems like a no-brainer. I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, it seems like an obvious thing to do. And you still have the Canadian government quite incredulously dragging its feet on a full placing the IRGC on the terrorist list. And you have the EU with its president now coming out and saying, well, we need what was it, that we need some kind of legal decision that the IRGC is a terrorist group before we can move forward. I mean, the most really silly excuses to not move ahead with doing something like this. What is your take on what all this equivocation is about?
Look, a few weeks ago, a friend on Twitter sent me a link that it's a document from the government of Canada. And since 2010, I should say July 22nd, 2010, that this document has been registered. I'm just looking at it and I'll send it to you, through special economic measures on Iran, SOR /210/165. IRGC and the Basij have been sanctioned. How many people knew this? That from 2010, based on the consultants of the Privy Council, and I asked a number of legal experts that based on this, how could we have seen so many people connected to the IRGC actually
setting up shop in Canada,
traveling to Canada, setting up shop, thank you, and migrating to Canada, investing in Canada. We had one of the associates of Qasem Soleimani, a former minister now, living in Canada for years. And Qasem Soleimani had considered him our man in Canada. How could this have happened? And when we hear that in the drones that are killing people in Ukraine, you see parts from Bombardier, how did that happen? When you see lots of businesses, in a way, still active in Canada that are partially managed by the money that came through associates of the IRGC, the big question is that were the Canadian institutions aware or unaware of this? I believe that some people were unaware, but there were people that had noticed this matter. Look, in 2019, when I went to Parliament Hill and gave a statement about Iran's environmental crisis and talked about the impact of IRGC and it's doing, and some people connected to and partnering with IRGC are in Canada. I also sent some news about, let's say, individuals whose companies or institutions were sanctioned by OFAC and were traveling to Canada, and their children were in Canada and are still in Canada. And how could have they brought money into this country without being noticed? Nobody cared. Nobody cared. So there is something wrong. The little guys suffer. The little guys like me, I'm not so little, of course. I'm around 250, 260 pounds, but people who are powerless have lots of problem in Canada with setting up bank accounts. Like Iranian Canadians had problems a couple of years ago, even if they had, if they've been living here for years. They couldn't, if somebody in their families lost their lives or they were going to get some of the inheritance, they really had problems getting that money. But how you hear that people are investing and migrating to Canada, bringing millions and millions of dollars.
What's your answer to that? I mean, at this stage, maybe in 2019 you could get the government could get away with inaction, but at this stage, what and it's funny because they say all the right things, that out there shouting, the prime minister and others, but this action. What is really at stake here that is preventing putting the IRGC on the terrorist list? And I would add the same thing for Europe.
Look, the thing is, some people have gained from that money, for sure. As Deep Throat in the famous Watergate story used to say, "Follow the money."
Right.
That's a big question, and unfortunately, we don't see investigative journalists doing their jobs anymore these days. That is sad, because I studied journalism in Canada and I had a very good professor, was an investigative journalist, Andrew Mitrovica. He was saying that many Canadian journalists avoid doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
I mean, these questions seem like a relatively simple ones at this point, and it was a real blow. Nor is putting the IRGC on the terrorist list going to change everything overnight, but just the dragging of the feet and the inaction of these major bodies that keep saying, oh, we care about democracy in Iran, we care about Mahsa Amini, women, etc. It's galling. It's very telling. It's very telling that ultimately action is not taken. Let me ask you a final question about something I know you wanted to mention, and you've talked a bit about the Canadian Journalists for Free Expression. Has given its International Press Freedom Award this year to Niloufar Hamidi and Elahe Mohammadi. These are the two journalists in Iran that broke the Mahsa Amini story to a certain extent and have been jailed. This is something you've promoted and shared, this award that was given to them. What does the awarding of these two journalists mean to you, Nick?
First of all, we have to say kudos to Mortaza Abdul Alian, who's on the board of CGFE and fought for this. And he told me that let's nominate these two this year. And I supported this, and we were able to go forward with this. And thanks to the board of CGFE who approved this proposal, though it was very late to add these two individuals to this year's nominees, to nominate them, but thankfully they accepted. Look, it's a sign that one, if you even do the right thing and consider all the risks, go and report something like how Mahsa Amini was detained, how she was beaten up, and what happened to her in custody, to give the real news to the people that's the important task that many reporters have almost forgotten in the last few years. Yeah, it's very prestigious. You cannot make that much money as a reporter. You cannot have a safe job as a reporter. I understand that. But the job of the reporter, based on the rules of journalism, is that you have to tell the truth. You have to show it as it is. You have to serve the citizens, and you have to monitor power. And they did the right thing to do. And considering all the risks and all the threats they received while they were in prison, and the IRGC and the Minister of Intelligence charged them with espionage, it was really important to mention their names as real journalists and telling the Iranian regime that we, the Canadians, consider these two individuals good journalists, and they should be rewarded for what they've done, not being detained and being faced with devastating charges. So I think I'm so happy that CGFE is giving this prestigious award, and I hope to see them out of prison and doing their professional jobs in the future.
Good for you for helping to make that happen. And
it's an honor.
Of course, it goes, we can't, we'd be remiss not to mention that Iran currently has the worst record per capita in the world now of detaining journalists, and in some cases killing them for simply doing their job. So
that's true.
Nikahang Kowsar, it's always an education, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope you will be okay coping with the pain, but for the rest of us, it's gain when we have you on. So very, very much appreciated.
Thank you so much, and I hope to visit Toronto, and let's talk at your studio the next time.
Oh, I look forward to it. Thanks, Nick. Bye-bye.
You bet. Thank you.
Nikahang Kowsar in Washington, D.C., and this is Full Time for Roqe for today. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Savvy Roham, talented Anahita, Super Parisa, Smart Pega, Rai Mertad, and Groovy Shaya. For all things Roqe related, go to our website, roqemedia.com, where you can also support us. Subscribe on any of our platforms on our ongoing mission, our audiovisual mission to explore and develop an encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. So Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, Telegram, YouTube, Instagram. You can find us on any of those platforms and subscribe on any of them. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. See you Thursday. In the meantime, Mizun Bashi.